The sun barely peeked through the gray clouds covering San Martin Elementary School. The building, with its peeling paint and cracked windows, was a silent reminder of better times. The walls, which had once been bright white, now had a yellowish tint, aged by time and lack of maintenance. In the parking lot, some teachers arrived in their modest cars. Miss Garcia, the math teacher, carefully stepped around puddles formed by the roof leaks while carrying a box of materials she had bought with her own money. It was the third time this month she had to replace the chalk and erasers. Don Roberto, the janitor, a 60-year-old man who knew every corner of the building, swept the leaves that had piled up at the main entrance. His movements were slow and methodical as he reminisced about how, 15 years ago, the school had been the pride of the district. The first students were beginning to arrive. Among them were Miguel and his friends, Carlos and Ana, all sixth graders. Their uniforms, though clean, showed signs of multiple patches. Miguel carried a partially deflated soccer ball under his arm, his most treasured possession. "Today we're playing at recess," Miguel announced enthusiastically. "I marked the goals with chalk so we don't have to use backpacks." Ana sighed. "If only we had real goalposts." "One day we will," Miguel replied, always optimistic. "Like the ones I saw on TV when Sadio Mané was playing. Did you see his last match?" In the main office, Mrs. Martinez, a 55-year-old woman with graying hair and metal-framed glasses, began her daily routine. Her wrinkled but nimble hands sorted through a pile of unpaid invoices as she hummed softly. She had worked at the school for more than 2 decades and had witnessed the budget shrink year after year. Through the window of her desk, she watched the children arrive. She knew their stories, their struggles, their dreams. She knew that Teresa, a 4th grader, walked 40 minutes every morning because her family couldn't afford the bus. That Juan, a 3rd grader, sometimes came to school without breakfast, which was why she always kept some cookies in her desk. The sound of a luxury car interrupted her thoughts. Director Thompson had just arrived in his black BMW, dramatically contrasting with the modest vehicles of the staff. Tall, around 45 years old, impeccably dressed in a perfectly pressed suit and shiny shoes, Director Thompson was the image of frustrated ambition. "Good morning, Mrs. Martinez," he said dryly as he walked past her desk. "Has the letter from the school district arrived?" "Yes, Director. It's on your desk, along with the pending maintenance requests." Thompson frowned. More requests? Don't they understand there's no budget? In his office, Thompson sat in his leather chair, the only new piece of furniture in the entire school. It had been a necessary investment, according to him, to maintain an image of authority. The walls were decorated with his diplomas and certificates, carefully framed. He picked up the letter from the school district and began to read, his frown deepening with each line. Budget cuts would be even more severe this year. His dream of being promoted to a more prestigious school drifted further and further away. Meanwhile, in the back courtyard, Miguel and his friends had started their improvised soccer match. The soccer field was actually an uneven patch of dirt, with poorly drawn chalk lines and imaginary goalposts. More children gradually joined the game. "Watch out for the puddle!" Carlos shouted, dodging a water-filled hole. It was one of the many scattered across the yard, a result of poor drainage and years of neglected maintenance. A yellow taxi pulled up in front of the school with a soft screech of its brakes. It was an old model, with a few dents along the sides. For a moment, no one got out. The driver glanced at his passenger in the rearview mirror, who seemed to be observing the building intently. Finally, the back door opened. A tall man stepped out, moving fluidly but cautiously. He wore worn but clean jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and a black cap that covered part of his face. A basic model backpack hung over his right shoulder. Mrs. Martinez looked up as the office door creaked open. The visitor stepped in with soft, almost timid steps, contrasting with his height and athletic build. The light from the window cast his elongated shadow on the worn linoleum floor. "Good morning," he said in a soft but distinctive accent. His kind and serene eyes met the secretary's. "I'd like to talk about making a donation to the school." Mrs. Martinez set her work aside, intrigued by the visitor's presence. Years of experience had taught her not to judge by appearances, and there was something in this man's gaze that conveyed sincerity. "Of course, sir. Can you tell me what kind of donation we're talking about?" The man stepped closer to the desk, carefully pulling out a chair to sit. The old furniture creaked under his weight, a reminder of the school's deteriorating state. "I've been observing this school for several days," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I've seen the children playing in the yard with a worn-out ball and no proper equipment. I've seen the leaks, the broken windows." He paused for a moment as if organizing his thoughts. "I'd like to help with the complete renovation of the sports facilities, the library, and—" The office door suddenly burst open, cutting off the conversation. Director Thompson had been listening, his curiosity and skepticism growing with every word. "Excuse me?" His voice sliced through the air like a knife. "You want to make a donation?" Thompson strode toward the desk, his Italian shoes clicking against the floor. His scrutinizing gaze traveled from the visitor's head to his feet, stopping at the worn jeans, the simple t-shirt, and the modest cap. "And you say you want to renovate the facilities?" Every word dripped with condescension. "Do you have any idea how much that would cost? Do you know that just replacing the basic sports equipment would cost thousands of euros?" The visitor remained calm, his relaxed posture contrasting with the director's growing agitation. "Yes, sir. I've done my calculations. I estimate around 500,000 euros to start. That would cover—" The director let out a laugh that echoed through the office. Some students passing by the hallway stopped, drawn by the sound. 500,000 euros? You? Thompson circled the visitor like a predator assessing its prey. "Sir, what did you say your name was?" "I didn't," the man replied calmly. "Ah, of course." The sarcasm in the director's voice was palpable. "Look, we appreciate your interest, but this is a serious institution. We don't have time for pranksters or people seeking attention." Mrs. Martinez stood up. Her years of experience told her that something important was happening. "Director Thompson, perhaps we should—" "No, Martinez." Thompson raised a hand to silence her, his gold cufflinks gleaming under the fluorescent light. "I've seen this before. People come here, promise big donations, get some publicity, and then disappear. Where did you say you were from?" "From Senegal," the man answered, his voice maintaining the same initial calm. "Ah, Senegal!" The director's smile widened, turning cruel. "And in Senegal, does everyone just have 500,000 euros to give away? Or are you some kind of African prince sending emails promising fortunes?" The students had been stealthily approaching the office windows, drawn by the increasingly loud voices. Miguel, who had been playing soccer, held his worn-out ball under his arm, watching the scene with intense focus. "Who is that man?" Anna whispered, wiping the fogged-up glass to get a better look. Carlos adjusted his glasses, which were patched up with adhesive tape. "The director is being really rude to him." Miguel remained silent, his eyes narrowing as he studied the visitor. There was something familiar about his posture, the way he remained calm in the face of hostility. It reminded him of something he had seen on television, on the soccer highlights he religiously watched at the neighborhood internet cafe. Inside the office, the tension was palpable. The visitor maintained a dignity that starkly contrasted with Director Thompson's increasingly agitated behavior. "Mr. Director," the man said, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience handling difficult situations. "Money is not a problem. If you'll allow me to explain—" Thompson stepped closer, invading the visitor's personal space. "No. Let me explain something to you." His voice had taken on a dangerously low tone. "This school already has enough problems without having to deal with people wasting our time. If you really had the money you claim, you wouldn't be dressed like this, don't you think?" Mrs. Martinez watched the scene in horror, nervously twisting a handkerchief between her fingers. In all her years at the school, she had never seen the director behave so openly prejudiced. Miguel continued observing, his mind racing. Images flashed through his head, nights spent watching matches on his neighbor's small TV, newspaper clippings about famous players carefully tucked under his mattress, YouTube videos watched at the public library. Suddenly, his eyes widened. The stance, that soft accent, the humility in his demeanor, it all clicked in his mind like pieces of a puzzle. "Wait a second," Miguel murmured, his heart starting to beat faster. He leaned closer to the window, almost pressing his nose against the glass. And then he saw it. The man had turned his head slightly, and for an instant, the light fully revealed his features beneath the cap. "It's him!" Miguel's shout shattered the tension like a thunderclap. "It's Sadio Mané!" The silence that followed Miguel's outburst was absolute. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to pause for a moment. Director Thompson, who had been in the middle of another tirade, stood frozen, his mouth open, words dying on his lips. Mrs. Martinez, who had been on the verge of tears, now looked at the visitor with a mixture of astonishment and realization. Her hands trembled as she reached for her glasses to get a better look. "Sadio Mané?" The words escaped her lips in a whisper. The visitor smiled kindly, a smile that had graced magazine covers and television screens worldwide. With a smooth motion, he removed his cap entirely, revealing his unmistakable face. "Yes, that's me." His voice remained as humble as before. "And as I was saying, I would like to make a donation to your school." The students gathered at the windows erupted into excited murmurs. Miguel, unable to contain himself any longer, pushed open the office door and ran inside, his eyes shining with admiration and excitement. "He's Bayern Munich's forward!" The words tumbled out of his mouth in rapid succession. "He won the Premier League with Liverpool, the Champions League. He's one of Africa's greatest players. He's—" Director Thompson had stumbled backward, bumping into Mrs. Martinez's desk and knocking over some papers. His face had gone from the red of indignation to the pale white of shock in mere seconds. His hands clutched the edge of the desk as if it were a lifeline. I didn't," he stammered, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. The sound of an elegant black Mercedes van pulling up in front of the school drew everyone's attention. 3 impeccably dressed individuals stepped out of the vehicle, a legal representative, a financial advisor, and Mané's personal manager. "Ah, there's my team," Mané said with the same casual ease he had maintained while enduring the insults moments earlier. "They've brought the paperwork for the donation." He turned toward the director, his gaze calm yet firm. "Although," he paused meaningfully, "perhaps we should look for another school where the director doesn't judge people by their appearance. A place where children are taught values alongside academics." The news spread through the school like wildfire. The hallways, usually quiet at that hour, filled with students and teachers peeking out of their classrooms. Miss Garcia dropped her stack of math materials. Don Roberto forgot about his broom in the middle of the courtyard. Director Thompson, sweating profusely beneath his expensive suit, desperately tried to regain control of the situation. His Italian silk tie seemed to be choking him. "Mr. Mané," his voice trembled. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I didn't mean to. We—" Sadio raised a hand, gently silencing the director. The gesture, though kind, carried the authority of someone used to big moments. "There is no misunderstanding, Director Thompson." His voice was clear, carrying the weight of his own experience. "You made it very clear what you think about people like me, about people who come from where I come from, about people who don't wear expensive suits or drive luxury cars." He paused for a moment, looking at the children who had gathered. Miguel stood at the front, still clutching his deflated soccer ball, his eyes shining with excitement and hope. "But you know what? This isn't about you or me." Mané took a few steps toward the students. "It's about them. About these children who play soccer with a worn-out ball and dream of something better. About these teachers who buy supplies with their own money because they believe in their students' future." Mrs. Martinez, who had regained her composure, stepped forward. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, but her voice was firm. "Mr. Mané," she said, "these children need this help. I have seen their dreams, their struggles, their potential. Please, don't go." Summoning all his courage, Miguel added, "Yes, please. I read about you at the public library. You were a poor child in Senegal, but you never gave up. You are just like us." Several teachers nodded, and some students began quietly sharing their own stories. Miss Garcia mentioned how some students couldn't do their homework because they had no electricity at home. Don Roberto spoke about the children who arrived early just to have a quiet place to study. Sadio looked at the children, then at the director, who seemed to have aged a decade in just a few minutes. His expression softened as he recognized something in Thompson's eyes. Genuine shame. "Miguel is right. I never gave up." A warm smile lit up his face. "And I won't give up on you either, because each of you deserves the opportunity to chase your dreams, no matter where you come from or how you dress." Director Thompson, who had remained silent for several minutes, took a step forward. His entire demeanor had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine humility. "Mr. Mané," he began, his voice breaking slightly. He paused, removed the gold cufflinks he had once been so proud of, and slipped them into his pocket. "I owe you more than an apology." The office was completely silent. Even the youngest children seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. "My behavior was unforgivable," Thompson continued, looking directly into Mané's eyes. "I have become exactly the kind of person I swore I would never be when I started my career in education. You know," Thompson took a deep breath, "when I was young, I also came from a humble family. My father was a school janitor like Don Roberto. I promised myself that I would go far, that I would become someone important." He ran a hand over his face, wiping away the tears beginning to form. "But along the way, I lost something essential. I lost the ability to see people for who they really are." Sadio Mané listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "You know, throughout my life, I've faced many people who judged me before they even knew me. In Liverpool, in Munich, even in my own country. I could have become bitter. I could have become just like them." He approached the group of children, placing a hand on Miguel's shoulder. "But I chose to be different. I chose to use what I have to help others. Because in the end, what's the point of success if you can't share it?" Mané gestured toward his team, who stepped forward with the documents. "We're going ahead with the donation, but on one condition." The director nodded eagerly. "Whatever it is, Mr. Mané, I want this school to become a model of inclusion. We'll implement a mentorship program. Older students will help the younger ones. Those who have more resources will help those who have less." His eyes scanned the room. Every child who walks through that door should feel like they belong here, no matter their background or financial situation. The transformation of San Martin Primary School was more than just physical. Yes, the sports fields gleamed with new equipment. The library was filled with updated books, and the classrooms were equipped with modern technology. But the deepest change was in the school's spirit. In the courtyard, where there had once been dirt and puddles, now stood a professional soccer field with artificial grass. Miguel, now the leader of the school's mentorship program, taught the younger kids the fundamentals of the game. The library, once nearly empty, was now bustling with activity. Anna had organized a reading club where students from different grades shared stories and dreams. The walls, once peeling, were now covered with murals painted by the students themselves, representing the diversity and unity of their school community. Director Thompson had changed as much as the school itself. He no longer wore expensive suits or drove a luxury car. He dressed simply and spent his mornings personally greeting students at the entrance. He had turned his old office into a community space where students could gather and study. His framed diplomas had been replaced by photographs of student achievements. On the day of the grand opening of the new facilities, Sadio Mané returned, wearing the same simple outfit as on the first day. The difference was that this time, no one judged his appearance. The courtyard was packed with students, parents, and teachers. Don Roberto, with a brand new broom but the same warm smile, had decorated the entrance with flowers. Mrs. Martinez, tears of joy in her eyes, was organizing the event program. Director Thompson took the microphone, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "Mr. Mané, you didn't just renovate our school, you renewed our hearts. You taught us that true wealth isn't in the clothes we wear or the money we have, but in our ability to see beyond appearances and help others." When Mané stepped onto the podium, the silence was absolute. When I was a child in Senegal, someone gave me a chance despite my poverty. Today, I don't just want to give opportunities, I want to change how we see each other. He looked at the students, his eyes shining. Each of you has the power to do the same. You don't need to be famous footballers or have millions. You just need an open heart and the willingness to make a difference. In the front row, Miguel smiled, proudly wearing his new school soccer jersey with the number 10, Mané's number. Beside him, new students from different backgrounds sat together, united by something stronger than superficial differences. As Mané prepared to leave, Director Thompson stopped him at the entrance. "Why did you do it?" he asked softly. "Why did you go through with the donation after the way I treated you?" Mané smiled, the same smile that was now painted on the school's main mural. Because the children needed to see that forgiveness and kindness are stronger than prejudice, and because maybe the next time you see someone dressed humbly walk through that door, you'll remember this day and listen to your heart before your eyes. The sun was setting over the renewed school, casting golden shadows over the new soccer field. In the main office, next to the photo of the school's team, a framed quote read, "True wealth is in the heart, Sadio Mané." And every morning, as new students walked through the doors of San Martin Primary School, they found not just an educational institution, but a place where dreams could flourish, no matter where they came from or how they dressed.